Are you tired of putting in the effort but not seeing the results in your health and fitness journey? You're probably making common mistakes without even realizing it. Welcome back to the Fitness League podcast. Today we are diving into a topic that hits close to home for anyone on a health and fitness journey: the top 5 mistakes sabotaging your health and fitness journey and how to fix them. Whether you're trying to lose weight, build muscle, or simply feel better in your own skin, there are some common pitfalls that almost everyone runs into along the way. And yes, we have made our fair share of them as well. Your health and fitness journey isn't just about what you do right. It's also about what you can avoid doing wrong. From chasing quick fixes to falling into the all or nothing mindset, some mistakes can completely sabotage your progress, or worse, leaving you feeling burnt out, frustrated, and ready to give up altogether. But not today. In this episode, we are unpacking the 5 biggest mistakes people make, and more importantly, how to fix them. These are the kinds of changes that can transform your mindset, help you stay consistent, and actually get results without feeling like you're constantly fighting an uphill battle. So if you've ever wondered why your progress feels slow, why you're struggling to stay motivated, or how to finally break through those plateaus, this episode is for you. Now, I know this is probably a pain point with the 3 of us as far as clients coming to us with preconceived notions about the things they should be doing, or even just the idea of health coaching to begin with, because they think, oh, this guy running an online challenge, well, he's a health coach and look where that got me. So we're going to outline top 5. Maybe we'll give you guys a bonus at the end as far as some of the most common things you may have been lured into. But taking it in right from the top: chasing quick fixes and fad diets. I think that kind of parlays directly into what I was just alluding to.
What would you say is the current popular fad diet out there? I feel like I'm so far removed from I don't know if it's just general fitness and health, social media pushy people, but what is there one right now that you guys have seen that is I
feel like the latest craze has been very carnivore-esque. I agree. I'm not sure if that's still the thing that people are trying. I think some of the fad diet stuff is getting a little bit overshadowed by the newer, hotter topic of weight loss medication. And so I think that's almost become the fad diet in a sense. And I know it's not a fad diet. I'm just saying I think that has almost taken the stage over some of the previously popular, do keto, do carnivore, do Whole30, those are not things that I hear people talk about all that much anymore. And I think it's likely because a lot of the people who were doing those fad diets are potentially now using weight loss medication.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you just got asked this on your Q&A yesterday, right, Joelle?
Yep.
We kind of have the same mindset when it comes to those things, and we don't have to go deep into the weight loss medication stuff on this episode, but I agree. I think at least, I go on TikTok every so often. I'm trying to be more consistent there. I know you guys don't love TikTok, but a lot of the younger crowd is on there. And unfortunately, a lot of people are talking about the weight loss medication in a negative light, as far as pushing younger people to use it to lose those last 5 pounds, or to kind of use it as a quick fix, which we know is not what it is intended for whatsoever. So maybe we touch on it quickly, but I think, that is definitely one thing that we need to drill home a little bit, maybe for those people who aren't familiar with what it's for and how it should be used for the long-term big picture.
I think it's also helpful to draw the congruency between those fad diets and the weight loss meds. If we were sitting here having a conversation about fad diets, we'd be saying, hey, if it's not sustainable, might not be something you should do in the first place. If you can't do it your whole life, might not be something you should do in the first place. Whatever your diet is, you should be focusing on high quality protein, nutrient density, strength training. And it's you could apply all of those same things that we would have said about a fad diet to a weight loss medication. We still want to see you prioritize protein. We still want to see you prioritize strength training. We still want to see you prioritize nutrient density. So I think that there's a lot of overlap there. And I understand we're talking about two different things. Some people are prescribed this medication. Some people are prescribed it for medical purposes and not just weight loss. So I do want to make that distinction. But we definitely agree in that it shouldn't necessarily be used for what I would call like vanity weight. Like, the 21-year-old who's like, I just want to really like lose 7 pounds for spring break. That is not who these medications are intended for. I do think that there's a time and a place. I have seen them, be incredibly helpful for people. Some of my family members have used these medications and they changed their life. And so to that, I'm like, great, awesome. But I've also seen that the people who have the most success on them are the people who are still exercising, still strength training, still prioritizing color, still prioritizing protein, still getting 10,000 steps in a day, still strength training. So I would say just be cautious about not using those medications as a replacement for diet and exercise. They should be used, if they're going to be used, in conjunction with diet and exercise.
And here's really where a lot of overlap occurs between like talking about fad diets and something like this. It's those who are looking for that quick fix, those who have not been able to stick to a long-term dieting protocol or training, strength training for the longer term. You're like, you know what, this looks like that silver bullet. Let me take this thing. And that's what the fad diets are marketed to us as. That is honestly, for a lot of people, what Ozempic and these GLP-1s have been marketed to us as. Is here's your quick fix. Doesn't matter that nothing else has worked. This is the magic pill. This is the magic injection that's going to get you to where you want to be. Oh, by the way, you're probably going to take it for the rest of your life if you actually want to maintain this progress for most people. So kind of the mental aspect of how you're hooked into these things. That being said, there's a big difference, which you guys just started pointing out, is this can be used as a tool for those who have been doing all the other things and have not been able to get over the hump, for whatever reason. And this has been that last little piece that has gotten them to that point. So there is some overlap. There's that Venn diagram there where there's some serious differences, but there is some overlap there. It's kind of circling it back to anything you want to throw into the quick fix fad diet category. It's a quick marketing point. So it's almost that challenge-esque where it's flashier. It feels more enticing from the beginning. So we are more likely to jump in with it. The problem is that it's not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. So any progress you do see falls to the wayside as soon as you stop maintaining that protocol. If you cannot maintain the regimen, you do not maintain the benefit. Right. That is true about everything in life. I don't know if you guys can come up with an example where that is not the case. When you stop doing something, you stop maintaining the benefit of doing that something. So that is really the main pitfall is, I'm going to overexert myself for this short period of time to achieve this specific result. But then we start the roller coaster again.
I think that comes up a lot with coaching clients. Like when someone applies to work with Levolution, they fill out this application. It's like, what have you done before? Like what has worked for you in the past? What programs have you tried? And a lot of times we get someone on a consult call and they're like, I've tried everything. I've done Whole30. I've done keto. I've done this. I've done that. Nothing works. And it's like, have you tried sustainability? Have you tried a sustainable approach that didn't take this all or nothing approach that actually was something that you could sustain long term? And I know that sounds like, I don't know, maybe it sounds almost obvious where you're like, yeah, but the thing is, if you're starting a program that's not something you can stick to, like Josh said, you're not going to sustain those results. And so when we kind of follow these short-term diets, they also give us short-term results. And so just to also draw one other kind of parallel between the fad diets and the weight loss meds, not to necessarily come back to this, but the other thing that I was going to say is regarding results. So typically what gets people hooked in that fad diet is the flashiness of it, right? Like, I don't know what to eat. So if I just cut out all carbs, that's like a very tangible thing to just do. And that simplifies everything for me. I don't know which carbs I should or shouldn't be eating. So if I just omit all carbs, like it simplified someone. It almost like lowered the barrier to entry. Now we know that going on a no carb diet is not going to be very sustainable, but someone is going to see weight loss, not necessarily all fat loss, but someone is going to see weight loss on the scale when they cut out all those carbohydrates. But really what's happening, almost any time that someone is jumping into one of these fad diets is they're usually putting you in a pretty extreme deficit. And I want to just kind of draw that parallel to weight loss meds regarding a very similar thing. The weight loss meds are making you not hungry. They're changing your hunger and satiety levels so that food is not as appealing to you, so that you feel full longer. It delays gastric emptying, for instance, and so food stays in your stomach longer, so you're not as hungry as often. And so what ends up happening is people are put in a very severe deficit by taking the meds. It's not like you take this weight loss injection and it's just like melting the fat off your body. It's just putting you in a really, really severe deficit. And so the same thing tends to happen with a lot of these fad diets is they put you into this severe deficit. And then the follow-up question / problem becomes, okay, well, I can't do this forever. And so now what? And that's where we see a lot of like rebound weight gain when someone comes out of a fad diet or out of the weight loss meds.
Yeah, I agree, Joelle. And one other thing I wanted to touch on along with that is the fact that even though there might not be as many like flashy fad diets out there right now, one thing we still always see as coaches is people coming in just under consuming food in general. So they try to slash calories down, even if it's not an official like typical named diet. They're slashing calories down so low because they think that's the solution to get progress and to get progress with fat loss fast. Will it get you fast progress? Probably. Is it going to be sustainable for longer than a couple weeks or a couple months? Probably not. And you're also not going to feel good. You're going to feel so shitty from eating 1,200 calories per day. Like I have been there. I will tell you with my whole body that it just doesn't feel good long term. So while it may feel good initially, here's your reminder that so many other things also play into how you sustain that fat loss.
And one thing I want to jump in with, because I think a lot of people can probably relate to it, is as soon as they hear, I was just picturing this as you were going through it, Joelle, have you tried the sustainable approach? They tune out. I feel like
it's not sexy enough.
It's not sexy enough. It's, what do you mean the sustainable approach? I'm not going to lose weight fast enough. And it's almost common sense. So it's taken for granted. Oh, I know you probably could do it that way, but it's not going to be as aggressive as I know I can take it.
Right.
And it's boring. So
and
as soon as they hear that, it's out.
Right. That was my point about like, I've tried everything. It's like, have you tried something that you can do consistently? But it's not sexy.
It's not. And I guarantee even after highlighting that as here's your missing piece, your missing link, this thing that you're tuning out to, I'm going to say 50% are still going to tune that out. So if you can find yourself in the other 50% and actually get yourself to stick with a maintainable approach, or at least listen to what those guidelines look like and don't immediately tune it out, you're going to be ahead of, I said 50-50, but the majority of people in all likelihood. All right, guys, that's number one. Chasing quick fixes, fad diets. We threw in some additionals in there for you in regards to those drugs. But again, in conjunction with certain things, we don't necessarily put them in that category. Now, number two, and it's something we've talked about a little bit more often the past couple episodes, but falling into that all or nothing mindset where if I can't do everything right now during this busy season of life, then I'm just going to do nothing. If I can't stick to my diet perfectly on vacation, I'm just going to go ape shit and consume everything, drink all the drinks, eat all the things, and go all out. Most of the good stuff happens, again, in most things in life, somewhere in that middle area, not on either end of the extreme, and yet we're drawn to it very similar to what we just talked about because it's sexier to be all in, to be dedicated, motivated, 100% in this thing versus kind of meandering in the middle.
I think this can be talked about on a smaller scale, and we can talk about it on a larger scale. So smaller scale, my immediate example here is thinking about showing up for your workout. Maybe you woke up tired today, or maybe, you had a crazy weekend with the kids and just, the routine is thrown off, whatever the reason is. A lot of people would just choose to not show up at all if let's say they only have 30 minutes compared to their typical 60. That is an example of having the all or nothing mindset, when in reality, we know that if you show up for those 30 minutes, that's still going to push the needle forward compared to not showing up at all. So I think talking about this on that smaller scale is just as important as like the bigger examples of vacation and seasons of life, because those small things that we do or don't do every day definitely add up and can really be the turning point when it comes to which way your progress is going, whether you're continuing to make progress or regressing backwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think when it comes to all or nothing thinking, I think, first of all, I think that a lot of our clients who come into either the app or Levolution for coaching, I think a lot of them struggle with this and they know they struggle with it. We get on a call and someone's like, I go through these phases of I train for a 5K and then I don't work out for 3 months. And then I train for a half marathon and then I don't work out. And then I did a 3-month, bodybuilding program and then I didn't work out for 6 months. And I think the biggest thing in sort of dismantling that, so to speak, is recognizing that you have to almost reward yourself for progress and not just perfection. And that it's not just about the end goal, right? The person who's like, I signed up for the 5K, I signed up for this, I signed up for that. I love that you have this overarching goal, but I don't want your fitness to stop at that end goal. Like we want it to be, of course, sustainable, like we've mentioned a bazillion times. But I think that the progress over perfection piece is really, really important for the all or nothing thinker.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like a lot of people are consistent for a chunk of time. I mean, I think with the new year coming up, we can use New Year's resolutioners as an example. What's the cutoff? I don't know the official cutoff that they've studied, but I believe it's like after the first 4 weeks or even 2 weeks that they see a drop off and how many people are still committed to their New Year's resolutions.
I think it's 80% by February.
Is it 80? That's a lot.
That's wild.
So after the first month, it's because that shiny newness has worn off, or maybe you bit off more than you can chew and you're trying to do way too much and change way too much too soon. But ultimately, like we talk about all the time, whether you're pregnant or postpartum or in a rough season, maybe going through a divorce or a move or whatever your situation is, there's typically always something that we can do when it comes to our health and fitness, even if it looks different than what we've done before, that's still going to make us feel good in that season and even help us progress with a goal like fat loss in a harder season, because we're approaching it with a better mindset and a more sustainable way that allows you to succeed, even if it's not to like your optimal standards.
There's something else I want to jump in with, but just to the point you were making as far as New Year's resolutions, I think it's January that everyone does it. Is it dry January where people stop drinking alcohol? They pick a month. I think it's usually dry January, but
no, it just happened. It just happened. Well, there is January, but there was one like November or October. I think people do too.
So the part that I don't grasp is I feel like those who are jumping into the dry month are those who may lean towards being the heavier drinkers of the bunch, rather than scaling back to moderation and allowing yourself to kind of, function a bit more optimally throughout your day-to-day life on a yearly basis, like throughout the entire year. Going completely dry for a month. And then it's just psychologically, there's a bit of this rebound effect where if you withdraw from something for a long time with the idea that you are going to re-implement it, a lot of time it's like from nothing and then you bounce up higher to where you were. So maybe on February 1st, you're going to get hammered with your friends a few nights in a row. Being able to take that exact same thing we're talking about, this all or nothing mindset, where we are focusing on moderation versus the up-down roller coaster of implement and remove, and especially this quote-unquote challenge version of one of these things where it's completely restrict for this period of time. So this is one thing I wanted to jump in there with, guys. If you're going to drink, like, that's not to knock you for drinking. You guys have heard previous episodes on our thoughts and how it affects a lot of different things. But being able to you do so in moderation to allow yourself to grow and to thrive, to reach your goals and to keep moving forward. Anyway, the thing I wanted to bring up was Brad actually just put up or sent out a great email on the 29th. So a few questions he asked. So at age 60, would you prefer a shredded physique or a sharp mind? At age 60, would you prefer to be able to fit into your high school jeans or be able to remember your family and friends? At age 60, would you prefer to be 5 pounds lighter or to be independent for 5 additional years? The point of that being, You don't need to train for the 10K. That doesn't always have to be the thing, this specific event, this specific challenge. Our goal is to live a long, happy, healthy life. Our motto for years has been live happy, live healthy, evolve. And I'm glad to see in the past year or so, I think longevity and health span and increasing those things have become more mainstream, which is making it a little more sexy to be like, hey, when I'm old, I want to still be able to run around with my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids. You want to take it to the super sexy extreme. There are people working to live to be 180 to 200 years old. There is the first notion that immortality may be achievable in the next couple of lifetimes with this beautiful technology we have at our fingertips nowadays. So it's not always about being this peak performer, especially for the 99% of us that are not professional athletes. Just Brad's email, one of our coaches, the reframe of what can you do long term? What does life look like by taking care of yourself now and training for this? How does that affect things down the road?
So if you're not on our email list, make sure you get on it, because the coaches have been crushing it.
These have been juicy. John and Brad had a couple juicy ones.
Yeah, it was a really great email. Brad went on, for those of you who didn't read it yet, go read it. I'm sure it'll be up on the blog soon too, if it's not up already. But the reason Brad kind of posed those questions was because he was talking about the hidden benefits of modifying your lifestyle, the hidden benefits of exercise, of getting enough sleep, because it's easy for all of us to have those frustrating moments on our fitness journey of like, well, I'm not seeing the progress I want to see. So why keep doing this? Why do I keep waking up early at 5 a.m. to train if I'm not seeing the progress I want to see? Why do I keep choosing the salad instead of the French fries if I'm not seeing the progress I want to see? Why am I still getting in bed at 9 o'clock at night if I'm not seeing the progress I want to see? And so this email, I don't want to give it all away, but this email went on to explain why you should still continue doing all of those things. And what the benefit is for your health and specifically your brain is what he went into, of making those lifestyle modifications regardless of your progress or your body fat percentage. But the last thing I just want to touch on with the all or nothing mindset, because this is something that, I know for myself, because it used to be something I very, very much struggled with, being very all or nothing. To me, it was the kind of like perfectionist tendencies of, if I can't do this perfectly, I'm not doing it at all. And it kind of ties into that conversation we had recently about flexibility being the key to consistency, and how it's not about doing it perfectly. It's about just showing up and doing it consistently, even if it's not perfect, and that is what is going to yield progress in the long term.
Agreed. So number 2, guys, falling into the all or nothing mindset. Number 3, neglecting strength training. And I think the trap a lot of people fall into, especially if they are health conscious, they're focused on improving, and maybe they are focused on losing weight, is focusing only on cardio for weight loss. I think that's one of the most common problems that we see is, I'm doing all this cardio, I'm barely eating, and maybe they did lose weight, but it's like, I've lost this weight and my body still feels like it looks exactly the same. And when that's happening, if we're not prioritizing, protein intake, if we're not prioritizing strength training, but we are successfully losing weight, a lot of times there is a much more dysfunctional ratio as far as fat loss and muscle loss occurring at the same time. So maybe it's 50-50 where you're losing half the weight you're losing is fat, half of it's muscle, because you're not prioritizing those other things that are going to allow you to maintain muscle as you're losing weight. So for the person who just slashes calories, jumps on the treadmill for an hour, if you even are losing weight, a lot of times you just become this, similar proportions. You look the same, just a smaller version of that. So you're not getting that quote unquote toned, lean physique that you've been striving for throughout this journey.
And I'd argue a lot of the time, and I speak from experience here because I used to be hardcore cardio bunny back before I got into powerlifting, or bodybuilding rather. But when I was so hyper focused on how many calories my watch said I burned from my cardio session, I would literally just jump from cardio machine to cardio machine. And that was like my workout. I would make up new things to do, and that's fine. Cardio has a purpose. My purpose in doing that was to change how my body was appearing, and it wasn't changing. And a big part of why it wasn't changing was because all that cardio was making me so freaking hungry. My appetite was through the roof from burning all of these calories and just simply exercising to burn calories, that I would be starving despite trying to eat 1,200 calories per day. And it would just be this, like, I just felt like I was on this hamster wheel and this yo-yo diet of like slashing calories during the week, and then I would hit a breaking point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to eat more food, have an epic cheat meal on the weekend, and then feeling crappy for the rest of the weekend, and we're back to square one on Monday. So I still think that is a common struggle people have. Although I will say strength training has become more mainstream now, and we are seeing even more women strength train, and it just is more of the norm. So I am happy to hear that. But I know there are still people out there who do just neglect it because they either think they're going to lift a weight up and look like a bodybuilder, or just they think it's only to look a certain way, when we know there are so many more benefits to strength training than just how you appear.
Do you remember 50/50 Burger in San Diego?
Yeah.
Talking about epic cheat meals. This burger was 50% bacon, 50% like ground beef.
It was literally,
I don't know how they did it.
It was huge. We would go and have cheat meals there, and then have like a massive ice cream dessert after. And like, I remember I would lay on our bed in our apartment in San Diego, face down, just like so. I was in pain because we ate so much, and I was restricting. During the week, we would eat like plain chicken breast with nothing seasoned on it, and like broccoli, and it was terrible. So
this is why
dedication.
Yeah, this is when we were still broke as shit, and my bed frame, it's not bed frame, like the box spring had a hole in it, so if she rolled onto my side, she would fall into this hole.
It was literally like a hole.
It would drop. I credit 50/50 Burger to my successful bulk to 230 pounds.
That's hilarious. I want to add one other thing about the neglecting strength training piece. I can speak from experience here in that in sort of the beginning of my health and fitness journey, I fell into like obsessing over Pinterest, like fitness Pinterest. That was like just before Instagram fitness really took off. It was like Pinterest fitness, and you'd go onto Pinterest and you'd like pin all the physique goals and the fit girl goals, like goal bodies and whatever.
Girls.
Yes. Yeah. It was all like bodybuilding CrossFit women. And with like, teeny tiny waist and capped delts and big glutes and whatever. And I remember being like 19 years old with an eating disorder and being like, I want to look like that. They're so lean. The answer is obviously going no carb and doing tons of cardio. And let me tell you, I did not look like those girls. I got stupid lean, but I was failing to recognize that these girls had like 30, 40, 50 pounds of muscle beyond what I had attained or acquired. And so I think the biggest thing for people to recognize when it comes to like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I have a dream physique or like have a goal physique, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with, but topic for another time.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a few points.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that. But the piece that I want to mention is that if you do have this like goal physique, or you look at someone else like fitness person's body and you're like #goals, that person likely has more muscle than you. That's not a dig. That's just the reality. Like I look at people sometimes too, where I'm like, bro, sick physique, but I'm like, that person has so much more muscle than me. They've either been doing it so much longer, or part of it is genetics, part of it is length of time that you've been training, part of it is just different seasons of life. But it's just something that I want you to keep in mind. So if you are someone that is potentially neglecting strength training because you think cardio is like the key to getting that physique, it's likely the strength training and the building muscle that is the key to the physique that you're really wanting.
And to that point, Joelle, I think a lot of people still are of the mindset that I can't build muscle until I lose the body fat first. Like that's like their priority, when in reality, you want to be doing both. Because if you're losing the body fat and you don't have the muscle mass that you have, like exactly like you said, you're not going to be happy with the outcome. So understand that you can do both to an extent, and kind of where you fall on that spectrum depends on like how long you've been training and like where you're at. Yeah. But There's no like prerequisite to strength training. Everybody should be strength training, no matter what your goals are, but especially if fat loss is your goal.
I just had someone, I'll just add this quick and then we can move forward. But I just had someone in my DMs ask me this morning. She was asking me some questions about training and glute exercises and whatever. And she's like, yeah, I'm really torn between entering into another dieting phase to lose those last 5 pounds, or if I should just really start focusing on muscle building. I'm really trying to like improve my body composition and get my glutes back after having my 4th baby. And I was like, I am team body recomp and go for the glute gains. Like that is, for me, those last 5 pounds, what's it worth? And that's kind of, again, whole other topic that we could potentially get into, but what is those last 5 pounds worth to you? If it means, having to be in that more extreme deficit, having to give up like the ice cream with your kids, because a lot of times it is harder to lose those last 5 pounds. You have to dig a little bit deeper or a lot a bit deeper for some people to lose those last 5. So if the goal is also, hey, I actually do want to gain some muscle, that maybe I lost during pregnancy or early postpartum and, build back up my glutes. You're not going to do that while trying to lose the last 5 pounds. Like to lose those last 5 pounds, if you have to be in a pretty steep deficit, which is very likely for a lot of people, because the more weight you lose, the harder it is to lose it. Then you're going to be hard pressed to be able to make those glute gains in that steep deficit. And so I'm team like, hey, be around maintenance, do the heavy lifting, literally do the strength training, eat, fuel your body for performance and recovery, and you're going to see those body comp improvements regardless of the deficit.
Yeah.
Speaking for every husband out there, forget the last 5 pounds, grow the glutes. So that's 3 guys, neglecting strength training. Number 4, ignoring nutrition quality, not just quantity. And this is a big point to highlight because we kind of alluded to it before and we talk about this on a lot of episodes. But when you're out and about, the convenient things, the quick things that you can grab on the go are typically very low in protein. They're a lot higher in carbs and fats and much lower in fiber. So those are the 2 main areas we tend to struggle with. And we, looking at it from a whole, like majority population, you're under consuming protein and you are under consuming fiber. I think the average last time we checked was about 7 grams of fiber per day for the American. That was the average intake, which we've talked about is extremely hard to do if you are consuming a slight amount of whole
carbs.
Foods.
Yeah.
Well, forget the carbs, but just eating an apple is going to get you close to that. A handful of raspberries is going to get you close to that. It's very hard to do. Whereas, ideally, if we can hover in that 25 to 40 gram per day range, that's going to be great for most of us. You want to go low and slow, but I'll pass the mic. Those are my 2 main points, making sure we're hitting enough protein and getting enough fiber in and fiber diversity, and we can take it from there.
I think it's also like, yes, we want nutrition quality from a micronutrient density standpoint. Like we want to be having tons of color, fruits, vegetables, so that we are getting fiber, yes, and we are getting vitamins and minerals, yes, and we do need to be having enough protein. But it's also the role that those nutrients, fiber and protein and color, are going to play in our hunger and satiety. And so if you do have, let's say, a weight loss goal, but you're neglecting fiber or protein or color, i.e. fruits and vegetables, you're going to struggle more with hunger and cravings and poor satiety, or like feeling satisfied after your meals, if you're not having those things. And so, yes, there's like a nutrient quality is good for your health standpoint, but there's also hey, you're going to manage your hunger a lot better too when you're consuming those foods.
And then therefore you're going to have better results, better progress. You'll be able to sustain that progress long term because you feel good and you don't feel super depleted compared to when you're eating normally or eating at maintenance.
Yeah, if you're consuming the majority of your diet as highly processed foods, you might take in 800 calories, which for some of you might be a lot, might not be. And then you're hungry again in an hour and a half or an hour, or you never stop being hungry. There's no cue, and you don't feel great along the way, though. You don't have a lot of nutrients going in that are not only sustaining you, but allowing you to thrive. Whereas we've talked about volume and how much volume it is of like a sweet potato, or fill in the blank here, to get a certain threshold of carbohydrates. Like the amount of carbohydrates I would need just from a sweet potato is almost at an uncomfortable amount of volume, which pros and cons. If I'm bulking, it's kind of hard. If I'm cutting, then hey, that's great. I can have this big old serving of sweet potatoes and fall in around 40 grams of carbs. So not only that, but again, consuming the fiber, all those different nutrients that are within that, you're feeling better. So even if caloric intake is down a bit, you are still keeping up with your mood and energy levels for running around with the kids, and you're sleeping well because you're not constantly thinking about food. You're not going to bed super hungry. So different roles that these things play when it comes to not only just, caloric content, but also what goes into those calories. And we've hit on this before as far as intuitive eating. You don't even necessarily need to track calories and macros if that's something you're totally against. You can still see great progress just by focusing on the things you are eating. So from a coaching perspective, I know we all have our own different niches as far as the directions we tend to lead our clients for those intuitive cues, but we've talked about things like plant points. So every different plant that you consume is a point. And then when you dive in with, different herbs and spices, those are quarter points. So for different spices will give you 1 total point. We've talked about eat the colors. So how many different colors did you consume? We can talk about portions of different types of fruits and vegetables. So different metrics you can kind of just keep in the back of your mind that are going to allow you to, as a side benefit, keep caloric intake down a little bit. So if you're trying to lose weight, that's a big plus. If you're trying to maintain weight, it's much easier to do. But also take the monotony of tracking off the table if that's something you're totally against. Like there's different levels to this entire process, especially when it comes to nutrition, as far as how to lead a healthy lifestyle through a variety of phases that you may or may not go through.
I think a big thing a lot of people also focus on when they decide to start a diet or focus on fat loss is they tend to lean towards the diet type foods. So by diet foods, I mean the super low calorie marketed foods that are low fat or low carb or whatever they're trying to market you to buy. And oftentimes those types of diet foods are much more processed than their like original version. So like, for example, in the coaches chat the other day, we were talking about in the 90s, like my mom and a couple of our other coaches' moms would give them skim milk because that was the healthier choice because it was lower calorie.
Oh, it was so gross.
It is gross. Like I'll have it now and I'm like, this tastes like water. Like, yeah, it's gross. But compared to whole milk, skim milk is much more processed. And like, that's just one example. And like like Josh said, there's going to be situations where you do have to fit things into your macros depending what your goals are. But I do think a lot of people start a diet and they immediately like go around the grocery store finding the best diet type foods or the lowest calorie foods that they can implement into their diet that maybe they never even ate before or even like. So just more of a reason to focus on those whole food, single ingredient sources. It's going to make your life that much easier. It's going to be more affordable and you're just going to feel better.
That also makes me think too, just on a quick side note, if you are starting that dieting phase and you're like, okay, let me go look for all the high protein snacks and the high fiber snacks and the low carb snacks. You should not need a million different types of protein snacks and low carb snacks and all these things if you are having balanced, nutrient dense meals. And my simple formula for building out a meal to just simplify things for yourself, protein, carb, color. That is my if you don't know where to start, protein, carb, color. Build a meal that has protein, carb, color. Done. You should not need the high protein snacks, the low, and I get like here and there, you're on the go, maybe you grab a bar or a protein shake, fine. But you should not need all these little snacks between your bigger meals, and you'd likely feel much more satisfied if you did just have these wholesome, nutrient-dense meals. You likely wouldn't have that need to snack.
This is another tangent I won't dive into, but just as we're talking about that, because that is a common eating pattern, it's your big meals. Maybe it's your 3 big meals and then 2 snacks between each meal. When we are constantly eating, that tends to lead to some gut issues. We don't have this emptying period where it takes a minimum of 3 hours. So 3 to 4 hours is ideal timing between meals, the meal spacing. And that's anything you're putting into your body that contains calories. So even if it's like a smoothie in between, if it's a coffee with all these creamers and flavorings in there, that all counts. Now, if you're eating consistently and you don't have that at minimum of 3 hour gap, your body can't go through this sweeping mechanism, right? Where it kind of takes care of some bacterial overgrowth, some dead cells, just kind of cleaning it out. Think of a bulldozer coming in between shifts, or I think I heard an example like the office building getting cleared out. So the cleaning crew comes in, they sweep out. Your body can't do that if you're always eating. So just one thing to keep in mind, especially if you deal with some even mild gut inflammation or discomfort, that can be a big component there. Consistently putting food into your mouth. You need that gap in between them in those meals. Okay. That was 4. Number 5, comparing yourself to others. So setting unrealistic expectations, understanding you don't live the same life as your favorite fitfluencers. And this is something 100% of us have all struggled with at one point in time during our health and fitness journeys and the bodybuilding.com era, fill in the blank here.
I think a lot of people do struggle with this, especially with just social media being what it is right now. People think they have to live and breathe the same way as whoever's holding their ideal physique. They also think they have to relate to every aspect of someone's life that they follow. This has personally been coming up on my page a lot that I've talked about, but really at the core of everything that we talk about with you guys here on the podcast, with our clients, it has to fit your life. If it doesn't fit your individual life in your season of life, it's not going to work for you. That's point blank. That's just not going to happen. It might feel good for a little bit, but if you're trying to do, like, I think of Joelle, we talked about the Pinterest bodybuilders and CrossFit girls. Like, I was in the same boat. Like, I remember looking at Ashley Horner's physique, and I still follow her. I love her. But like, I remember looking at her, and she has so much muscle, and who the heck knows like what her story is. But like, you cannot compare because you just don't know what they're doing. They could be training for 6 hours a day for all you know. And I think
be enhanced and using
they can
steroids.
Be enhanced. Yes. You have no idea. So it is unfair for you to compare wherever you are to someone else in their journey, because it depends on how long you've been training, what their life looks like. There's so many different variables that are going to impact how somebody is appearing on the outside.
I also, just to sort of come back to that, you don't live the same life as your, favorite fitfluencer piece. I want to just mention, like, if it doesn't resonate, if something that someone posts doesn't resonate with you, then it wasn't for you. And I think that's important to recognize. Alessandra, I know you've gotten some stuff about like pregnancy and like sharing, being pregnant with your third, and that was unexpected. And like that message resonates with some people. It doesn't resonate with other people. And, I know I've had similar things with like the do it tired mantra that doesn't resonate with everyone. If it doesn't resonate with you, then it's not for you. And that is okay. Like that is perfectly fine. And if there's enough that someone is posting that is making you uncomfortable, or you are rolling your eyes every time this person posts, like just unfollow them. You don't need to hate follow them. You could just unfollow. And so, part of that comes down to this like comparison game. But like even myself, Josh and Alessandra, we live very similar lives, but very different lives at the same time. You guys are in a household where you both work from home. I'm in a household where my husband is not home during the day. He's gone pretty much 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so my workday and my childcare look a lot different than yours. And there's different levels of hard on both of those. Like you guys don't have regular childcare for Cora, and you're parenting in shifts, and that makes your workday look different and your parenting day look different. And same thing, similar opposite end, like my husband is gone during pickup and drop off and dinner time and bath time and all of that stuff, and I'm solo during that stuff. Like we are all living a different life, but still focusing on the foundations of our health in ways that feel good for us. So I just want to kind of point that out from just a perspective of like, hey, we do things differently in the way that we train, in the way that we have childcare, in the way that our work days look like, in the way that our parenting schedules look like. But we are all managing to still prioritize the steps or the strength training or the workouts or getting up at 5 a.m. to do the training session or whatever. So it's okay, point is, to not live the same life as the person you're following or the person who you look up to. But you as the consumer have to be able to separate what messages are for you and are not for you. and it is okay if not every message resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, oh, go ahead.
Nope.
I was just going to use an example. I think of we live in a great neighborhood, and we have new neighbors who moved in a couple months ago, and they have kids in college. So they're a little bit older than us. Their kids are grown. Their house is beautiful. Every season that comes around, they have it immaculately decorated for Christmas right now. Like, I just admire her house from what I've seen on the inside and outside. And it's just, I can admire it and really appreciate it with the fact that I also know I'm just not there right now. We have littles. I'm pregnant. I'm barely like throwing my Christmas tree up in the corner. So I just wanted to relate it to something outside of health and fitness too, because this is everywhere. This is in our day-to-day life. This is on social media. You can appreciate someone's message and where someone is in their life and still look up to them without feeling bad about yourself or wherever you're at in whatever phase of life you're in, if that makes sense.
Circling back to actual physique to physique comparisons, we grew up in a time where performance enhancement wasn't as transparent as it is becoming now. So even like to this day, a lot of our favorite influencers and fitfluencers, like, you still don't know. They still haven't come out and said, yeah, I've taken it in the past, when like your eyes would say you must have taken something, but then you're like, you know what? I don't want to judge this person. They said they haven't, maybe they are the 1 in a million with the freak genetics, and good for them. Side note, I'm not saying he was on anything. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. One of my favorite influencers of all time, and growing up especially, was Steve Cook. So I can still remember the picture on Body Space, holding a barbell, black and white. Dude was yoked. And that was like the point in my life where I'm like, all right, I want to be these numbers came from this moment. I'm going to be 6'2", 225, 8% body fat. Those are my numbers. That's my goal. That's where I want to be at. And it was just this image where he obviously got paid to travel the world and do these things, and specifically just be in the gym, whether he's taking anything else during that time or not. That was his deal, his MO. Whereas we obviously have a bunch of different things going on. Not to use that as an excuse. Plenty of people can get to that level with life and everything. But that was someone I always compared myself to. And growing up, that's continually evolved. A few years ago, we were at an event. One of the nicest guys I've met sat down. I had no idea who he was until I looked him up after this dinner. But he's big into peptides. He's big into performance enhancement. He's very, very open about all of it. He doesn't hide any of it. Just a friendly dude, great looking dude. And it's someone who, once I found him on social media, I'm like, oh, this guy is kind of a big deal. And consistently following his stuff and getting myself to want to take those things in order to reach that level. And I'm always transparent about things I've tried, haven't tried, my entire health journey. I've taken testosterone for a week and a half my entire life. I took peptides for a week. That's a whole story on my my reaction to all that. But I tried. It didn't work for me. Or I felt good until I didn't feel good. And I can probably tell that story at another date. But getting back off of those things, figuring out the underlying issues for why I had so little energy, getting those things in place. Even after hitting those checkpoints where, hey, I feel good again, I'm happy with how I look, continuing to see this person's like, oh, well, maybe if I try this one more time, like maybe if I just ease into it a little bit differently, I can try to get back onto that level. But I ended up unfollowing, again, a fantastic dude, fully transparent, unfollowed because I was going down a road that I didn't need to go down. It was just this aesthetic that I've been chasing my entire life that I knew certain things would help with, and I could probably get close to by doing certain things, but I don't need that. And it doesn't add value to my life. It may end up taking value away from my life now that I'm back on a path that I feel really good about. So that comparison, they say comparison is the thief of joy. If you can't live in the moment and be happy with where you're at in your specific journey, and you see things pulling you down a certain avenue, you need to be aware of that, and you need to make the adjustments necessary to remove that component from your life, that influence from your life, even if it's not done so in this purposely negative way. If it's not serving you, you need to know when to step back.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I think it's helpful for people to hear too, like, hey, this is our job. Like, we work in the fitness industry. We run coaching companies and app companies and all of that. And we still struggle with those same things of being like, dang, that's like, it does a sick physique. I'd love to look like that. Or like, what could I do to look like that? What do I have to take to look like that? Like, we have those moments too. I've unfollowed plenty of people who just like weren't good for my headspace. And so, I think that's just helpful for people to hear.
No doubt. All right, guys, we're going to give you a bonus because I think it's super important. It's not as catchy as top 5, so it's technically top 6, but clickbait on the title. Sorry. Overlooking sleep and stress management. And it is arguable to say that if you are not doing these things, nothing else we talked about really matters because this is your foundation.
Yeah. Sleep and stress are going to be the two most underrated parts of a health and fitness journey, I think.
Yeah. Someone in my question box the other day asked kind of specifically about this. They said they were on a fat loss journey. I think they were postpartum. Yeah, they were, because they said that they lost some weight, but they still had maybe 60 pounds to go, somewhere along those lines. And obviously sleep was off. They're in the earlier postpartum period. Stress is higher. And they asked, should I go get my hormones tested, or should I go that route? Is that the reason why I'm not losing more body fat right now? And my answer was, honestly, no. Like, maybe there are some things we can tweak with your nutrition, but if sleep and stress are kind of wonky right now, that's probably the reason why. And I think it's great. They were able to lose a large amount of weight leading up to that point, and they got to a point where they just can't budge those last 60 pounds, which I understand is super frustrating when you have a goal like that. But at the same time, there are so many other things you can do before you get labs done or before you go test your hormones that likely will make a larger impact than just going and figuring out, this one level was off, which may or may not be helpful. So oftentimes, even if it feels like you're doing all of the right things and you've been doing all of the right things, there is still some things that we can tweak, especially when it comes to sleep and stress. And obviously, having kids, your sleep is never going to be perfect. Your stress levels are never going to be perfect. Like, there's some shit that's going to go down pretty much every day that impacts these things. So we're not going to chase perfection here, but that doesn't mean we can't be focusing on it and prioritizing it as best as we can and control what we can control when it comes to getting enough sleep, going to bed at a decent time, just the little things that may seem insignificant, knowing you're going to wake up a few times with the baby, but actually do really help.
Yeah, I think something that my dad has said before on some of our mental health calls as it pertains to stress is you're never going to live a stress-free life. You can't even try to just omit stress. It is always going to be there. But your resilience to that stress can be built upon. But the other thing that I just wanted to touch on, in relation to that question, Alessandra, about someone saying do you think I should go get labs done? I would say very similarly to you, you should probably only get labs done if the foundations are being covered, and some of those sort of non-negotiables and the ability to control your controllables, right? I'm sure many of you have heard before someone say stress is making it so I can't lose weight. And this is a prime example. And I'm going to kind of put stress and sleep hand in hand here. People say, stress is making me gain weight, or stress is halting my fat loss. And it's not that poor sleep or high stress is inherently causing fat gain. It's that stress and poor sleep are indirectly impacting other things, like impacting your desire to train, impacting your hunger and your cravings, impacting your satiety levels, impacting emotional eating. And so it's more so that the stress or the poor sleep are interfering with other things, and those other things are what's impacting body composition or weight loss goals or so on. Because if we are highly stressed and under sleeping or under recovering, that's going to impact our energy. That's going to impact our desire to train. That's going to impact the way we feed ourselves. It's, that stress can interfere with our sleep, and now that sleep interferes with our training and our hunger and our satiety. And it's kind of this weird snowball effect that happens. So if you are someone who's hey, I'm in a season of life where sleep is really poor and sleep is really low, I'm up feeding a baby multiple times per night, and my, stress is really high, this might not be a season of fat loss for you. And that might be something you have to come to terms with, which comes back to that point of setting realistic expectations. But I do think that there's a way that we can work to control our controllables, like getting in bed earlier. I mean, Alessandra, you and I, we could probably talk about this another time, going into like the sleep training side of things and how that benefited us, our babies, but also us as parents and our ability to get more sleep, which impacted other ways that we could show up in our life and so on. So do what you can to control your controllables, but also set those expectations about what's realistic in this season of life.
Yeah, those are huge points as far as sleep, stress management, having a huge role in the decisions you're going to make throughout the day, the things you feel like doing, the patience that you have or don't have, the choices around food and cravings and whatnot. I will circle back and say, and kind of going into like, oh, do I need any kind of TRT, any kind of hormone replacement therapy, anything along those lines, versus controlling the controllables. So when it comes to sleep, stress management, sleep, if we're getting minimal sleep every night, so say we're averaging around 5 hours of sleep, that is also going to affect some things physiologically. You are going to notice an impact to your testosterone levels. So for those, maybe it's not kids, maybe they're just staying up late, they're going out, they're drinking alcohol, they're not eating very well, for lack of a better term there. By prioritizing sleep, you can see a significant improvement in your hormone levels. So you can have a little bit better effect on building muscle, on losing fat, versus jumping right to the, I don't want to say placebo, I don't want to say quick fix, but the external protocol that may do something similar, but you could have controlled that already. One thing we have in the app, talked about for years at this point, for fun, we kind of call it the apocalypse protocol. So this kind of staple of habits to allow us to improve our mindset, to allow us to kind of develop these consistent routines. But the idea like, okay, the world ends tomorrow. Are you self-reliant? Like, can you get by? Is your mindset in the right place? Like, do you have habits established to feel good and to thrive on your own? To that extent, that's one of the biggest reasons I want to hold off on any kind of HRT for as long as possible. Like, I'm not against using testosterone down the road if I really need it and there's going to be some positive impact. But to that point, like, I want to be able to live on my own and to thrive just on my basic protocols, needing nothing exterior, needing no kind of external stimulus, anything outside of my specific control. That's going to affect me, that I'm going to become reliant upon. So controlling the little things, focusing on stress management throughout the day. You know, one of the things, maybe the only thing we have control on in life is our reactions, like how we respond to something. We can't control what happens to us 1,000% of the time. We can control how we respond to that, how we handle it, how we react to it. So kind of reframing that perspective of, okay, this is the situation. How do I move forward? How do I turn this into a positive? How do I learn and grow from this negative experience? Like your dad said, Joel, you're never going to get rid of all your stress. You're never going to get rid of most of your stress. You're going to have a hard time getting rid of any of your stress, but you can train yourself to respond better to those things. So it's not as high of a climax in that moment. And that allows you to continue to make better choices, to sleep better, and to have a better impact across the board with decision-making like you already hit on. So kind of my runaround for why those things are so important. But to recap, guys, top 5 with our 6 bonus mistakes you were probably making: chasing quick fixes or fad diets, number 1. Number 2, falling into the all or nothing mindset. Number 3, neglecting strength training. Number 4, ignoring nutrition quality, not just quantity. Number 5, comparing yourself to others. And our bonus, overlooking sleep and stress management. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you guys want to throw in there? Any additional bonuses? Looking good?
Looking good.
Where can they find you?
At Joel Smith.
Try again. You don't go out of order.
Who usually go? Is there an order?
I usually go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't. Okay.
Oh, hang on. Don't sign off
attention
yet. We got to go through our 3-episode rule. So since we totally botched that, guys, hang with us for one more minute. 3-episode rule. If you are still listening into your 3rd episode, all we ask is that you leave us a quick 5-star review. If you want to share us on social media, we greatly appreciate that. This show is a free resource that we put out. So for those of you who can't, work with us one-on-one, maybe you're not in the app yet, just things we can give you for free that you can implement on a day-to-day basis. That helps us grow and expand the audience. The idea is that if you're still listening into that 3rd episode, you have probably found some actionable steps on your own, and this can probably help somebody else. So that's just you paying it forward. Help grow the audience, allow someone else to go ahead, Joel. You jumping in?
I was just going to say, side note, if you're doing our December challenge and you share a podcast episode or share your review up on your stories, you could get a lot of points for the December challenge. Mm-hmm. It's one of the highest points in there to do that sharing.
So now not only are we giving away free content, we're actually paying you for it. There's some pretty cool prizes. If you guys haven't seen that email, I think we can probably throw it up on stories as well on social media. So
yeah.
keep paying attention there. You can jump in at any point during December, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities to jump in and catch up to those points. We're going to have a live leaderboard. You guys can live track that as we go. Now let's try this sign off again. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
At Joelle Samantha.
At Josh Skutnik.
Everything else you need is linked in the show notes.